You may have seen a few days ago that Elon Musk, owner of X, formerly Twitter, announced that the social media platform giant is going to allow for and even provide adult content, hardcore pornography, as a premium service. This begs a lot of questions. First of all, why and why now? But more than that, we're going to take a look at exactly what kind of ripple effect this could have in the United States and globally. And beyond that, even what kind of tragic impact this could have on something as serious as human trafficking. Let's dig into it. One of the greatest concerns here is that this doesn't seem to really be part of a strategic process that has brought in any experts or sought out any insight. I can only assume that because otherwise there's willful ignorance at play here. But let's back up a little bit and understand what's the origin of this, what possibly could be the reason for this recent decision. So we don't have to go back very far. October of 2022, Elon Musk pays $44 billion for Twitter. Okay, I know $44 billion is a fantasy number to most everyone, including myself. There weren't any competitors that were creating this price war. This is what he paid for it. And so fast forward a year later, October of 2023, the valuation for Twitter was $19 billion. That's less than half the value of what he paid for it. And then just go a few months further into January 2024, and it was reported by banks, by economists, and then more specifically and more importantly, Fidelity, who is invested in X, that its value has dropped 71% since the purchase time of October of 2022. So that brings us to one of the main reasons, and it's money. When we understand what kind of reach something like X social media has, there are giants throughout this playing field. But in the past, historically, it's been sort of like, oh, well, we try to stop it. Some stuff's going to get through. We'll do better. But this is a completely different, it is a sea change. This is Twitter saying, look, under freedom of speech, and when Elon Musk purchased X, he actually went on record then, which starts to look now like a genius laying some groundwork. Is the genius, there is no arguing that. A groundwork for what's to come. He said, I am a free speech absolutionist. And so some of that same language made itself into the recent press release that was announcing this change. Things like, we will allow this sexual artistic expression. We will ensure that there's consent and that this is appropriate content that is being made willfully. Just that alone, how are they going to do that when no one else has been successful? In fact, we look across the spectrum of the internet. Those that are purposely releasing graphic content that hasn't been vetted, Pornhub, for example, among others, they have tried to solve this. And it's not something you can commit to in a way that is a guarantee. Especially you can't do it in the conditions of you're going to feature hardcore pornography on your website. So as we roll this out, let's just kind of look into the future and understand what's going to happen. This is not going to be, if you want to share a link, that's fine. We're talking about a serious monetization opportunity for a company that has seen a 71% reduction in its value. Those two are not mutually exclusive. In fact, it's probably causation, right? If you want to make money on the internet, the most revenue generating content you can provide or you can latch onto is hardcore pornography. That's just been proven throughout. When we look at statistics like already on Twitter, between 15 and 18% of, X, I'm going to do that a lot probably, on X, between 15 and 18% of content that's downloaded and accessed and shared is pornography. That's based on their own records. And now we're going to open the floodgates so that it can be not only allowed, but encouraged. That free speech banner that he is waving, this is not about free speech. This is about facilitating exploitation. This is not a morality judgment. So stop for a moment if you're going along with me saying, yes, morally speaking, this is wrong. While we all have our own particular background and perspective when it comes to morality, this is bigger than that. This is universal. Let it not be reduced down to a moral argument, because that is so easy to defeat when it comes to somebody justifying their actions and decisions. This is a health issue. And to see X decide to go forward with this, with all of the data that we know is available, I can't imagine a genius, a captain of industry, an absolute market influencer like Elon Musk and his brain trust doesn't have data that is readily available to anyone. If you look up this data, even the most conservative estimates that talk about exposure to pornography, it's in the range of 9 to 13 years old. That's a child. That's a child's mind that is going to be influenced by what they see. And now let's move forward. Let's get to 18, where it's a legal adult. It's still wrought with problems. You just brought this content onto a service provider, a platform that gives it a measure of credibility. It is more normalization of exploitation, abuse, a power imbalance, rape scenarios, incest. The categories that have become more commonly visited on illicit websites are nothing short of disgusting. And that's not a moral discussion. That is stopping and thinking, is incest disgusting? I think we can all agree that it is. And it has become one of the fastest growing segments, stepmom, stepdad, categories on pornographic websites. That's to say nothing of the really dark and deeper subject matter that's out there that is very easy to find. When we realize that age is around the average age of first exposure, we can't stop there. We have to ask ourselves, and I would ask you to ask yourself, X, what does it mean for a child who has no point of reference to see that content, that shocking, horrible aggression, nothing to do with intimacy? And they're trying to process this with their amygdala, the part of the brain that can only process fight or flight and arousal from either self-defense or sexuality, which at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, they are not engaged in that yet. They're trying to make sense of this content. And you're going to open the floodgates for this to be something that's accessible. Now, I know that people are going to say, well, kids obviously can't use it, can't access it. We have got to stop and take some accountability here. If it's online, and if it's on a website, and if it's on a social media platform, and we're going to stop and say kids can't access it, that is a willful ignorance that we cannot allow to exist, especially at this scale with these stakes. And so now we've got a child that's been exposed to it, and their brain's trying to figure it out. They're not able to use their limbic or logic center. They're too young for that. They won't be able to use that based on brain science and what we know until they're in their 20s. So from 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, when we look at the demographic that will be exposed to this, we've got to understand it's going to dictate their assumptions about sex and sexuality and sexual relationships. And it's going to start to form for them what it is to be a boy or a girl in a relationship. That is no place to learn that. Let's move forward a little bit older to adulthood, okay? Let's say that everything's perfect and no children ever access this content. Let's say I'm 21 years old and I access it and I'm watching it. If you don't already know this, X leadership, Elon Musk, please, I'm not hard to find. Hit me up. I'll be glad to explain it to you. But the content and information is out there. The research has been done for years. We are seeing an undeniable connection between brain chemistry, our neural pathways, and how they're developed whenever we see pornography, graphic pornography, oftentimes violent, graphic, aggressive pornography with some dominance or absolute objectification associated. It starts to change our brain. And in fact, it has been compared to cocaine, only it's more addictive. And when we look at the content, not only is it readily available, it is self-replicating. I can consume it in the privacy of my own home. I can get that instant gratification, which is going to teach my brain that this is what sex is now. That is going to influence acting out behavior. I know to this point, you're hearing this, you're either agreeing and nodding your head, or you're going, look at this guy. He's over here wagging his finger, the sex police. When I say it's going to influence acting out behavior, But I understand. Don't take my word for it. Listen to these men who have been arrested for solicitation of prostitution, who tell a story about how that began with their addiction to pornography.
So I started watching just regular porn, and after that, I got into softcore, hardcore, and it just built up more and more. So for me, like even psychologically, it just started affecting my brain to where I started getting aggravated, angry, just because I was watching stuff like that, and I was in my mind, I was thinking that's what a woman wants. For you to be dominant, to be aggressive, to be manly. But I started to figure out it's not true. Everything you watch in porn it's just an ad. It's not real.
We can tell you with the over 600 men, probably closer to 700 men that we've talked to now, almost every one of them had a porn issue. In fact, we did a study with Dr. Kevin Wilkinson, and this study was looking at the correlation and then causation associated with what pornography and a hypersexualized, or as we coined it, a porn prevalent culture influences in the buying behavior of men. The statistics that are associated with the survey that we gave these men, almost, I think it ended up being about 60 men who were convicted, had bought sex, had their sentences reduced, and had no reason to be dishonest at this point. This was a post-process, post-arrest, post-conviction, and post-settlement survey. In that survey, what we found was pornography played an undeniable role in their decision to buy sex. In fact, as I'm sitting with men, part of our questionnaire, if they're in a hotel room where they thought they were meeting up with a woman who's being prostituted, somebody that they connected with online, or if they're in an illicit massage business, a brothel, where we do quite a few reversal operations with HPD and the Human Trafficking Rescue Alliance. And we're talking to these men. One of the questions we ask them is, how did you find this place? How did you end up here today? And we're almost exclusively, we just recently had a Rice University researcher look at our data, and from that data extrapolate the percentage of men who said, I was online on a porn site. I saw a link, I clicked the link, that then brought me to an escort service. You see, we've got to understand something about pornography. Take judgment out of it. Take the morality side out of it and see it for what it is. But what you don't understand is you just entered a sales cycle. What I mean by that is I came for the content. I clicked on that. I got the instant gratification. But after every one of those videos, the business model begins. A pop-up. This pop-up that now, thanks to X, hundreds of millions of people, I think there's 600 million subscribers on X right now, are going to be entered into this sales cycle. This is the type of scale that we've got to understand is about to hit by allowing this content. The other thing that you'll find on every one of these websites is a link in the corner, and that link says, meet local ladies, meet lonely moms. I'm cleaning up the language, right? But it is a direct link, in no uncertain terms, to escort sites, prostitution. Every porn site is a sales cycle, and what they're selling is illicit sex. When we understand that, and we step back and look at what we've seen in the last 18 to 24 months as far as exposure of these sites and how their upload practices have essentially no vetting, how underage kids, children, have had videos of them uploaded, and despite multitude of requests, did not have them taken down. The New York Times, a Pulitzer Prize winning author, Christoph, detailed this in his article, The Children of Pornhub. If you haven't seen it, go understand that. And understand that that was Pornhub. That was a website who identified as a pornographic website. And even they weren't practicing really any measurable consent or content regulation. We saw that Exodus Crime began to look into this further. And then from that, Trafficking Hub really looked closely at it and brought to light so many violations, so much to the point where a huge portion of the content on Pornhub, the world's largest porn provider at that time, had to be taken down. Literally taken down because it couldn't substantiate consent, it couldn't substantiate ages. There was really no way of knowing if abuse was happening in that video. X, you are saying you're okay with this. In the face of this progress, you are going to regress and say, freedom of speech, artistic sexual expression. No, this isn't about freedom of speech. I'll say it again. This is facilitation of exploitation. That's a problem. And it's a problem that is going to be catalytic in its normalization factor. People see that, well, it's social media, or it's porn on social media, so it must be okay. You're going to create a market that may already exist. I know it does already exist, but you're going to outwardly create this market where other social media platforms are going to follow suit. They're going to monitor you closely and see, oh, they're getting away with it. We can bring an influx of viewers. We can have this be the hub. People access their phone calls, their social media, their direct messages, their pornography consumptions. We're going to be a one-stop shop. That's the whole goal. And who are we to judge? You don't get to just throw your hands up with this willful ignorance. It is incumbent on you as a service provider to understand the ripple effect that throwing this stone is about to cause. You know, when we look at the danger associated with pornography, it's true. Hyperbole exists out there. There are people who will say that it is responsible for really 99% of human trafficking. I've seen these ridiculous statistics. But if we stop and really look at that pull through and ask, how is porn related to human trafficking? Is that even a thing? The relationship is pretty simple. You see, in a porn prevalent culture, porn isn't tolerated or allowed. It is celebrated, as we're seeing with X's platform. And as that happens, that creates demand. Demand requires supply. And even if you don't reach for your wallet, simply accessing pornography is the same as if you went and did a Google search for something that you wanted to buy. You are now a customer, a consumer. And in that relationship, so you are creating revenue on the back end for them. X, you are going to be a conduit now for these porn sites, for these sites to have that type of revenue influx. Sites that still can't substantiate if they are actually even working within the most basic human rights parameters. If we're not okay with people being prostituted in a trafficking situation, but we're okay with turning a blind eye to the fact that pornography is human trafficking's greatest commercial, then that is willful ignorance. That is irresponsibility. And it's all in the name of money. We've got to be better than that. We must be. The consequences are too drastic and the stakes are just too high. Melissa Farley works with women who are prostituted. And in fact, would probably be considered the preeminent expert, having talked to thousands of women who have been in the life of prostitution. And the numbers of women in that cross-section of her relationships and surveys that say that pornography was made of them while they were being trafficked is staggering. It's over 50%. And this is thousands and thousands of women spanning multiple continents. We don't have the luxury anymore of saying, well, we don't know, or we're not sure. This is just simply a choice of content consumption. We don't get to say that anymore because the statistics are just too easily available. And beyond statistics, the wreckage that we're seeing, let's say that trafficking is out of the equation. We are just talking about porn consumption. In 2017, a group of divorce attorneys, I don't usually go to divorce attorneys for my research and content. They saw a trend of over 50%, I think the number was 56% in this survey, this study, that divorce was directly related to betrayal and pornography, related to pornography. We're seeing it affect our families. It's not just about, we shouldn't let kids see it. It's bad and naughty. They're not old enough to understand. It's not just that. We have got to understand that there's a cause and effect. There's correlation and there's causation to real destruction that happens on a regular basis. X, you have a higher responsibility to say that we're just going to give people their freedom and the right to freedom of speech, to understand that this is already out there. All we're going to do is put it in the same place that they're having their social media conversations. There is a convergence, a very troubling one here that you're bringing together. And in doing so, you are going to accelerate. This is not fanning the flames of a fire. This is throwing jet fuel, especially considering the reach and the hundreds of millions of people that are on your platform. This is throwing jet fuel on a raging fire. The consequences will be absolutely finite. We can measure it per person. In fact, as we understand this and we understand the motivation, I can't help but notice that you have a 2-to-1 ratio of men to women that are users on Twitter, X. That's the highest ratio divide between genders, men and women, of any social media platform. Why is that significant? Well, who are the majority, if not the overwhelming majority, of viewers and consumers of pornography? Men. This is absolutely a floodgate opening, and it's going to be instant access in a way that's going to cause wreckage. There are over 40 negative consequences to viewing pornography. And even though we know that's true, we can substantiate that, the research shows that, we don't talk about that. The porn site is not required to divulge that. I mean, if I go to get alcohol, does it say it on the side of that bottle that this, if I consume it, will cause a change in me? Yes. Cigarettes, same warning on the side of it. Why? Because I should be an informed consumer. Energy drinks, a child can buy an energy drink. On the side of every one of those cans, there's a warning on consumption. That doesn't exist for pornography. Yet there are over 40 negative consequences, including it being a leading cause of depression for college-age students. Look at the cross-section of demographics on X now. That 2-to-1 ratio increases even more when it comes to men versus women. That is right in the heart of the consumption, really widest range of what the porn industry sees. There's overlay, there's alignment, and that's not an accident. Finally, this is troubling on yet another level. Some of the accounts on X that have the fastest growing followers are really, in no uncertain terms, human trafficking related. We've seen allegations here recently brought by Romania on Andrew Tate. Now, if the argument is to be made that Andrew Tate is just a man's man and this is what he believes, that's somebody's selective ignorance that they can indulge in. But the fact of the matter is, formal charges from a country have been brought against a person who on your platform has seen, in the time that those charges were brought, a 170% increase in his followers. If that doesn't concern you, if that doesn't speak volumes to the ripple effect, the cause and effect, the scale within which people who are on this platform will be influenced by someone who, at the very least, has personally bragged about his grooming techniques of women, then what is the standard of concern? Where do you take accountability? I know that we're just an anti-trafficking organization in Houston, one that focuses on demand, and we're just a small outfit. Elon Musk will probably never see this video. I hope you at him. I hope you do, because I'll have this conversation at any time with him. But as a public, we do have a voice. If you're on Twitter now, X, you can speak up. In fact, do so knowing that you're going to get pushback. Do so knowing that you're going to see people say, "Oh, you're just a prude. You're just a sex police. You're just wagging your finger in moral judgment." Go ahead and do that. And then if you would, link this video. Nothing I've said here can't be substantiated. And in fact, I've been conservative in my conversation with anybody that'll hear this. It's time that we stand up and speak truth toward what the cause and effect is of consuming not only pornography, but doing it in a way on a platform that is going to have an exponential impact. It's not enough just to shake our head. We need to raise our voices. Share this post. Share it with other people, tagging us. And if they want to question it, we're here. Like I said, we're not hard to find. There is a higher standard of expectation and responsibility when it comes to having a platform as large and far-reaching as X. X, you need to do better. It's not too late to change your stance on this. If you don't, it'll speak loud and clear to what you prioritize, and that is money over people's well-being.